A Rose for Emily is a short story written by William Faulkner. Tells about a woman named Emily Gerson who had isolated herself from society until her death. Emily's life was not so known to many for her father's prevented her to socialize as a young lady. Hence, she continued living as an adult loner. When her father died, Colonel Santos exempted her from paying tax out of pity and out of their status as she succumbed to depression. Emily has always had her father and never had any other man except for him when he was alive. So all her lingering sexual desire which were not fulfilled as she had not experienced having any romantic relationship with a person of her opposite sex under her father's reign underwent repression until those got itch in her unconscious. So unconsciously, she had been wishing of having a man in her life, but the only man she could have was her father. Thus, when Mr. Gearston died, Emily developed obsession on his body that at first she did not want his corpse to be taken away from her. A displacement on how she enacted her hidden sexual intentions since, as stated firmly, he was the only man she had. One day, a construction foreman in the name of Homer Byron arrived in her town, Jefferson. The two had dated and were even believed to be trying the knot sooner or later, as the townsfolk had seen Emily and Homer hang out often. However, the man disappeared and never showed up again after going in and out of Emily's house. Year passed and Colonel Santaris was no longer in charge of the town. The latest sheriff and the city authorities in charge during her latter times attempted to make her pay tax, but she would always refuse, telling them she had nothing to pay for and that they should talk to Colonel Santorres about it, though he already died a decade ago. Then the death of old Emily Gerson came. Then death of old Emily Gerson came too. Her funeral was attended by the whole town as they were curious about her home, only to discover the extremely rotten corpse of her Homer and the some traces of the old lady inside a room known by no one.
Good day, everyone. My topic is the psychological approach in the short story A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. To begin, we will focus on three key aspects that provide insight into Emily's curious psyche: Freud's id, ego, and superego. The symbolic elements included throughout the story and the defense mechanism used by Emily to navigate through the challenges faces in her own town. Sigmund Freud theory. The iceberg theory states that 10% of the conscious mind is visible, or the tip of the iceberg, and the remaining 90% of the subconscious or unconscious mind is the large mass below. Sigmund Freud divided the human psyche into three different parts, which is the id, ego, and the superego. And this can be seen all in the action of Emily Grierson. So, the id is the primitive and instinctual desire of the psyche. It contains the unconscious energy that is needed to fulfill a person's most basic needs. The superego is the voice of reasons, or restraint the consciousness in combination with the rules we learn from society. Last is the ego. On the other hand is the rational parts of the psyche, the mediator between the id and the superego. Throughout the story, Emily's desires for love, companionship, and attachment to her father, who at the time served as a very dominant figure, reshaped the majority of her life was a primary source of her desire, wishes, and impulses following his death. Emily struggled to detach herself from it, his influence displaying sign of denial, refusing to let go of her father's deceased body to preserve the little connection she had left of him. Emily also struggled to detach herself from her companion, Homer Baron, going through extreme length in order to fulfill her desire for love. This can be determined as an expression of the primal desire for attachment and the struggle to accept the loss of her father. Next is ego. Emily's secretive nature throughout the story and the tax obligation. Emily can be seen protecting her ego by keeping her personal life safe, hoping to create a false identity to the public. She consciously chooses to keep aspects of her life hidden to the townspeople, having a secluded life and refusing others to access personal space. Her secretive nature can be interpreted as a response to the high expectations set by the community that she believes she has to meet to keep up with her family's name and high status. Another examples of Emily's ego is when she refused to pay her taxes. Even with her high status in the community and the financial resources given to her by her family, she refused to pay taxes, repeatedly saying, "I have no taxes in Jefferson." This ego-driven behavior can be attributed to her sense of entitlement. Lastly, superego, tradition, values, and expectation of her southern community. Emily seen following past tradition and expectations set by her family names. She is shunned by the southern community for having a relationship with the northerner, which is lower in her status. She expresses a fear being judged by the community and tries her best to follow traditions and values of the past, and revealing that she is in romantic relationship with a northerner would be detrimental to her status, and that is why she keeps her secrets. So the pressure to meet expectation of her community takes a toll on Emily. Her superego becomes inflexible, resulting her to isolate herself to her demise. Next is the symbols. The symbols of the story allow us to interpret Emily's mind through universal objects. The house of Emily Garrison can be seen as a symbol directly relating to her mind and decaying psychological state. So, before Emily's father passed, the house was seen as one of the nicest house in the community. So, after his father passing, Emily alone and her mental state started to decay. When meeting at the garrison have to discuss a foul smell, the deputation entered in. When they sat down, a faint dust rose sluggishly about their tights. This can be a symbol of Emily's refusal to let go tradition, of her pack tradition, her mind collecting dust over the passing of her father. Secondly, Emily was once seen as the most beautiful woman in the community. Roses are seen as the most beautiful flower. Despite their beauty, a rose left uncaked begins to decay. The rose symbolized the decay and deterioration of Emily's mental state, which longing for love and companionship, but is unable to please the eye of the community, leaving her to keep everything in secret. Lastly, the locked room. The locked room in Emily's home symbolizes her hidden secrets and repressed emotion. It represents aspects of her life so that she wants to keep locked away from the community. Next, next is defense mechanism. Emily displayed defense mechanism coping strategies in the face of conflicts such as anxiety, depression, and isolation following the death of her father. The first is denial. Emily refused to let go of her father's corpse, denying the reality of his passing. This, this denial protects her from pain of losing her father and allow her to keep the sense of connection once had with him. Secondly, repression. Emily suppresses her desire for companionship, intimacy, and fulfilling relationship. This repression likely came from the expectation of community and her own mental state. So, by repressing all of her desire, she avoids confronting her true emotions and the potential of disappointment that may come. And lastly, Emily forces herself into isolation. So, Emily forces herself into isolation, withdrawing from social interaction, staying in her home, creating barrier that shields herself from potential emotional pain. Being the last member of her family, she carries a weight of it, of her family traditions, forcing her to put on a fake smile in a time of mourning to meet social standards. That's all.